an absolute magician. He set up for
Hello and welcome to the weekly edition of Troy Nunes' An Absolute Livestream. This time, we've got a lot of football to talk about, because the season started. As always, I'm here, Steve Haller. We're here a day late, but with me as always, Andy Pregler, Christian DeGuzman. What's going on, guys?
Not much. Syracuse can hold the distinct advantage of having not only a better record than Clemson so far this season, but also holding opponents to fewer points than Clemson this season.
Yeah, that's a thing.
So that means Syracuse is going to the Natty.
Absolutely. Transitive properties all around.
The Syracuse transitive wins over Clemson are vast and mighty and will continue to annoy Clemson fans in our comment sections. So I'm all for it. And I'm just going to be here for all of this all the time as we talk about, gentlemen, the 1-0 Syracuse Orange. For those that don't get the joke, most people thought that we would not be here in this place, either because they're pessimistic people or because they just want this program to fail for weird reasons that I will never understand, but we can get to that to a later date. Syracuse went on the road to Athens, Ohio to play the Ohio Bobcats. They won 29-9. Scores definitely interesting, not quite scoregami, but was still the first time that Syracuse has won a game 29-9 in a very, very, very long time. It was not quite as comprehensive as the score line makes it out to be, but the game was never really in doubt from the fact that Ohio was never outplaying Syracuse. But Syracuse never really pulled away and delivered a gut punch to Ohio in the way that, say, a Rutgers did, which we will get into later in the show. But first, gentlemen, let's talk about what happened. And Syracuse played Ohio. They did not show a whole lot of the playbook, which is now par for the course for Dino Babers' teams. However, they won the battle in the trenches. They pretty much did whatever they wanted to on the ground. And defensively, they were the definition of bend, don't break, and had a breakout performance from a freshman. So, Christian, you get first pick at the pile. Oh, timeout from Steve Haller.
Technicality on the field. Breakout from two freshmen. One first-year freshman, one second-year freshman.
Oh my God! This is gonna be so confusing for like the next 5 years.
Absolutely.
I had a conversation with someone at Sidearm Sports, which, as you know, provides Syracuse websites and the websites of about like 90% of D1 colleges at this point in time. And I mentioned that a little C next to COVID freshman would be really, really helpful when we're talking about these things. And they were like, oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
So if that happens, I'm not saying that I was the one that did it. I'm just saying that everybody's complaining in the comment section about this very same mix-up that I make every week for the rest of time actually did come through. So one true freshman, one COVID freshman had great games.
I was calling a Lemoyne soccer game this weekend, and it's so confusing to see some of them be listed as graduate students, some people being listed as 50-year seniors. Like, it's just all over the place right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. So before we dive into the full rest of the cast of football, because if you're listening to this, we're gonna talk way too much about football. What else did we have hitting the world of orange sports this week?
Well, that's a great question because it felt like pretty much this whole week was dominated by football. The other football kind of happened in terms of the men's soccer team right now, currently as we speak, level with Niagara in the second half, 0-0. Losing unfortunately to Georgetown 1-0. Number 5 Georgetown in that fact. First of all, we talked about how Pitt was good. When did Georgetown get good at soccer? That's also another like. They've
actually had a lot of runs there. Like they've been pretty consistently at the top. They had a couple down. Probably since you were on the hill to now has been their lowest point.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
But now Georgetown's back. Unfortunately, they scored on a counterattack goal after a mix-up with a throw-in, and then that was all Syracuse gave up. They outshot Georgetown 6-3, and that was unfortunate. Women's soccer is somehow 4-1.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Fun
shout out to Nikki Adams, turning that program around. It's you can't really go wrong there. It's
We'll see what
great
happens
to
at
see
ACC
them.
play, but 4-1 right now is a good sign.
4-1 is just as many wins as they've had in a lot of seasons lately. So it's
Gentlemen, I'm going to pose
good.
to you a question. Do you
Oh,
know
God.
the other non-Buddy Boeheim Syracuse athlete who has signed a long-term NIL deal?
Oh God,
No.
no.
The answer is a women's goalkeeper, number 22, Lysiane
Oh.
Peru, who signed with a sports marketing agency out of New Jersey. I don't really know exactly what the deal entails, other than this company seems to be doing really well with international players who have some kind of international experience or qualifications. And as you might know, Syracuse tends to do this thing where Canadian soccer players come in, play for the Canadian national team, and then get really good. So maybe this is what they're banking on. Just wanted to throw out there, the goalkeeper, she's a grad student, will not be on the Hill next year. So this is definitely the senior season where I feel like, hey, we might send another player to the Canadian national team, and this time it'll be on the women's side, which, cool.
So that they can infuriate Americans by drawing with them in World Cup qualifiers.
Listen, last thing that we'll talk about before the football, the U.S. World Cup qualifier game that took place last night between Canada and Mexico was very Syracuse laden. Miles Robinson got the start for the U.S.
Canada and U.S.
We don't live in Mexico, Andy.
Oh shit, sorry. Canada, U.S. Sorry, I get the L tree stuck in my head. Canada versus the U.S. Miles Robinson got the start for the USMNT, and both Kamal Miller and Tajon Buchanan came in as subs in the second half. Canada would go on to tie the game, not with Tajon or Kamal. Both actually played really well and solidified Canada after the U.S. was basically doing the oh crap, we have to score here. And naturally, I'm going to say this once, and we can talk about it at another time. Tajon Buchanan and Alphonso Davies on the same field, on the same side of the field, is not fair. That is a cheat code that should not be allowed in international soccer. I'm just saying, I know that there are other players who are also really good, but having the two of them doing overlapping runs on each other is just not fair. Like, that's that.
I mean, when actually healthy, the U.S. has that whole Christian Pulisic and Serginho Dest thing going on, but that didn't quite come to fruition because Dest is out again. So
Yeah.
here we are.
As always.
Yep.
Yeah, the USMNT side of this pod will have to wait for another sad time because we have actually happy things to talk about this week.
Well, we do have
Objectively happy.
one more thing just for posterity's sake. We are grabbing almost all of the Spallina brothers. The second of three Spallina brothers, apparently, per Josh Rothenberg in the chat, did commit. So Jake Spallina, the Fogo prospect in the class of 2023, who's the younger brother of Joey Spallina and the son of
Joe.
What's Joe? There we go. I was like,
Joe.
it's another J. Like, is it Joe? So Coach Joe Spallina have officially committed to the Orange. So we're, as Christian said in the pre-pod, all of your Spallinas belong to us.
I'm down with that.
All right. Now now that the rest of the Orange sports world is out of the way, we have one thing to focus on. To the football.
To the football, as two great bald men say on a semi-weekly basis. The Syracuse Orange, as we mentioned at the top, defeated the Ohio Bobcats 29-9. The spread was Syracuse minus 0.5 at one point in time, offered by my employer, FanDuel Sports. So we were just giving away free money to everybody out there. I hope you took advantage if you are in a legal state.
I didn't.
For those, I am not allowed to bet with FanDuel Sportsbook, so I could not take advantage of our free money. But for everybody who did, they felt really good about it. The Syracuse team came out and played a very basic game plan. we'll get into that in a little bit later. But Christian, I want to toss it over to you. Like, what stood out to you from this game? Out of the many things that could be taken away from this game, what to you stood out as the most either interesting or the most impactful moving forward for the Orange season?
I want to do the most interesting because I think this could be something that develops as the season goes on. And it's not the freshmen that we teased, Tucker and Chestnut. We'll get to them. But trust me, we'll get to them. I want to talk about what also helped Tucker develop in getting this Syracuse Orange to 283 yards rushing. Let's put that in context for a second. 283 yards rushing. That's incredible for a team who just couldn't rush the ball to save their goddamn life last year. And a large part of that was because that Tommy DeVito figured out how to RPO well. That is, I don't think on the bingo list that you had to set up the season, I don't think that's the box that many people had selected.
So this, you know what? You remember that Alabama title game? There's one coach that really loves to run a lot of RPO, and that might be Steve Sarkisian. And apparently Sterling Gilbert took that tweet to heart because, hey, it worked.
And Tommy DeVito said he likes options. And guess what? The RPO is really good at giving you options. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there were many of any plays that were a bad option read from Tommy, which was incredible to see him have that decision making in a very pressure situation. That's not a bad MAC front seven that Ohio had. Yes, Syracuse made it look bad, but it's one of the more talented front sevens in the MAC this year.
They're all grad seniors or grad seniors. Yeah, we're making up. So in this COVID year, we're just making up classifications.
We are.
Grad students or seniors, like that whole front seven has been on the field for Ohio for a long time at this point.
And as aspiring play-by-play broadcasters can tell you, it's really hard when you're trying to figure out which year to call a player when you're trying to tell them about their biographical information. But that aside, that aside, it's refreshing to see DeVito 7 carries, 52 yards. Yes, the passing we'll get onto later because there were some hits and misses there. But the fact that he ran the RPO so well should worry a certain Garrett Schrader on the sideline because that was supposed to be his bread and butter as well. And the fact that DeVito did that so effectively, and the fact that he was routinely breaking out not short 1-2 yard runs. On average, he was breaking out 5-yard runs and then getting out for the longer 10-yard runs here and there. But to see that kind of consistency with his RPO reads was should give Syracuse fans a lot of hope about how the offense can variety its play calling from the simplified form that we've seen last year and a little bit simplified in this game as well. I think that's the big takeaway that Syracuse fans should be excited about as to how this offense can improve from the dismal offense that looked last year.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we keep alluding to was that Dino didn't really show a ton of the playbook. And that's because for a lot of the game, Syracuse was running this pretty basic set where DeVito was either in a shotgun or a pistol. He wasn't under center, but he wasn't doing like a true shotgun like you'd see in the NFL or like you've seen in past years. And then you'd have Maximilian Mang as the tight end either go in motion pre-snap or he'd be in the backfield lined up as a fullback in that Elmore role. And DeVito was basically given the option of, all right, you can either hand it off to Tucker, you can take it yourself, or you could hit one of the wide receivers running a real short route. Like, it's going to be like, we're basically running the same play over and over again. We're going to do different motions. We're going to do different, maybe different
snap
offsets.
Motion, like pre-snap motion. What a concept.
They really did take that title game tweet to heart.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Gilbert must have read that and was like, I'm going to change my whole playbook. It's fine.
But this is, Steve, you said this before. A spring ball is when this stuff gets installed, and Syracuse did not have one with Gilbert, and it becomes incredibly apparent that someone like Mang, who was a true freshman during the COVID year, gets a true spring ball this year as not as a somewhat freshman, kind of freshman, whatever you want to call these COVID freshmen, and all of a sudden was able to slot in for Elmore. We'll get to why Elmore wasn't playing in a minute. Was able to slot into that role and do the job of lead blocker, misdirection player pretty well. which makes me feel better than I thought I would have been when Elmore was out. I was really concerned about that, considering Luke Benson's lack of desire to block anybody at any point in time.
That was very diplomatic of you.
What was that?
That was very diplomatic of you.
Yep. Mang did a pretty good job in the like true lead blocking role, but I think that was like the big win that I took away from this game is that all things considered, Syracuse basically lined up and ran the same 5 or 6 plays the entire game and was able to win the game this way, which is great because we've got Rutgers coming up. You've got Liberty in a couple weeks. You want to be able to win games without showing a ton, not to go too outside of the Syracuse run, but you saw Washington State lose a game this weekend on the goal line because Nick Rolovich wanted to have a specific look on the scouting footage instead of going for the win. It's the kind of galaxy brain stuff that you can get into with bad coaching. Yep. Just Nick Rolovich is not the smartest human being in the world. That is wonderfully apparent. We're going to continue to do that.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
I go into the woods for 4 days and I come out and that's what happened this weekend.
Steve, I'm telling you right now, college football is on fire. It is fantastic. I missed it so much.
You missed Georgia and Clemson not scoring any offensive touchdowns.
Yeah, I saw that score and I thought it was the soccer score.
There was a lot that happened.
That's a Syracuse Mets score. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there you go.
So Steve, as you kind of alluded to, you were in the woods. You saw a lot of the highlights, so you might not have seen like the intricacies on the day-to-day. So we're not going to ask you to do a breakdown of the entire offensive line. But what did you see from this game that was either really interesting for you or you think is most promising moving forward?
Well, I was telling Christian before the show, I took the last 4 hours. I got back I got back at like 2. I had to mow the lawn. It looked like a field, whatever. Life happens. I had to put my son to bed, etc. In between there, I jammed as many possible highlights in as possible because there was no way to watch this game. Like, my wife literally gave me free pass to watch the game when I got home, and I couldn't find a way to do it. So, I don't know how my offensive line breakdown is going to go on Wednesday because there's no way to see what the hell happened. Thankfully, we're done with this Mac crap. Like being stuck, not Mac in general being crap, but being stuck with CBS Sports, who doesn't decide to let you see things more than once. But in that set, there was a lot of improvement. There just from a blocking scheme itself and just from a running game itself, how Tucker was reading what the line was doing and making the right cuts, and that's a function of him having a whole year to work with these guys and know what they're doing. But like his first long run before the DeVito rushing touchdown, he ended up like he bounced it outside of Vettorello. They were man up in a zone blocking scheme. Tisdale had already gotten to the second level. Vettorello had kind of gotten around his guy, but was still getting pushed back. Tucker was able to bounce around him, get around Service, who had sealed his guy. The second level was already taken care of because the offensive linemen were going to where they were supposed to be, and not hanging on too long, not doubling beyond where they needed to. Just little things like that, and yes, Tucker made the run. But people were where they were supposed to be against for the play call that was called, and that's a welcome sign. Aaron Service did not look like he graded out at a 40 for run blocking like he did all of last year, which was great to see. I don't know, like Davis, when he's back to full strength, will slot in for Tisdale, I would assume. I didn't see enough to say one way or another, but just from past precedent, he's a better run blocker and probably a better pass blocker, unless Tisdale made strides this offseason, which would be awesome. If that's the case, then we're in a lot better shape than I thought we were. So any of these situations will be good. Watching Max Mang do what we were expecting Elmore to do was impressive. He's a little rough on the blocking from the fullback standpoint. not quite the Sorcerer Supreme yet, but we're working on it. So we'll get
He's
there.
still first act Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah. Like, we're not Broken Hands Doctor Strange. We're after
he just got there.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he just discovered what he was doing, so we're gonna work into this.
He just got the Wi-Fi password. That's what.
Yes. There we go. We got there. So
Gotta bring in the Marvel references.
So yeah, before I try and break down the entire offensive line off of clips, overall, it looked much more cohesive, much better than anything we saw last year, including against competition that would be on par with what we like, the bottom of the ACC or Liberty. This was still a much better performance than anything we saw there.
Yeah, I think I don't think we're gonna have time to kind of break this down in depth, and I want to see a few more weeks. Yeah, well, fair. I think I want to say what I really am trying to say is I want to see a few more weeks of sample size, but I think we're realizing that even though Syracuse was a glorified ACC body bag last year, playing games is better than not playing games last year when it comes to team development. Ohio only got to play a few games. And it was really apparent that even though there were some really talented players on their offensive line and the running backs, I mean, Tuggle just, he only had 65 yards. That man felt and looked like he had more during that game. They just were not at the same speed that Syracuse was. And we're seeing it with UConn is just, Randy Edsall literally tried to retire and they said, no, you're getting fired. They look like an absolute tire fire after not playing at all last year. The rest of the MAC did not do well in their opening weekend. Obviously, kudos to Northern Illinois or Eastern Illinois. One of them pulled off an upset, which was fantastic.
Northern Illinois. It was against Georgia Tech, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes,
22-21 over
yes.
Tech.
Yes, the team that Syracuse beat last year. So I'm not saying that this is the case for all MAC teams, so I want more data
no,
points.
The Huskies. Sorry, Southern Illinois is the Salukis.
Yes.
Give me my directional.
Moral of the story is that we saw a lot of players who struggled last year for Syracuse, and I mean struggled with a capital S, look significantly better this year, and they did not make any of those first-time playing football mistakes because they got those out of their system last year. Which is why I want to turn to the defensive side of the ball, because we have not mentioned the name of Darian Chestnut, aka Deuce. I kept thinking of Deuce Upside Your Head, which I'm going to turn into a thing that happens on this show, on the blog, in some way, shape, or form, because Deuce Chestnut feels like the football equivalent of Clint Dempsey in so many ways. Most of which being he's showing up out of nowhere and is already the most impactful player on the Syracuse defense, which Ohio, if you don't know what we're talking about, Deuce Chestnut is a freshman out of New Jersey. He won the cornerback slot. He's out of Camden, New Jersey, and won the second cornerback position behind Garrett Williams. Ohio targeted Garrett Williams, I think, once or twice, got denied and said, nope, we're not going to do that. So they tried to pick on Deuce Chestnut, which was definitively the wrong thing to do because Deuce had a fantastic game. And not just in pass defense. There were several times where he was playing up in run support and was the last man before a play got ugly, where last year we would have seen a play break for a 10, 15, 20-yard gain. Deuce stopped it at the line of scrimmage. So I just want to call out the fact that Deuce Chestnut being this good raises the floor of the defense significantly, which I feel is really important because the defensive line did not look that good without McKinley Williams. Christian, you were giving me the most most visually stimulating responses, so I'm passing this off to you.
I want to get this in because Steve, you probably won't see this in the clips and the highlights that you saw. You probably saw Deuce stop the fourth down on that play, and you obviously saw his interception. There was one play, I think it happened in the second quarter or so, where Ohio threw a screen to the left side, and it was a bubble screen. And Deuce fought past his blocker, and then got to the guy that was catching the screen and tackled him in the back behind the line of scrimmage. Like, that was one of the most impressive plays that really, like, solidified, like, okay, he's here to stay. I've got PFF stats up here. First of all, PFF gave Deuce an 89.6 overall.
It's okay.
The next closest starter was Mikael Jones, who had a 73.1. Let's let that rest for a second. His coverage grade was 90. The next closest was Jason Simmons with a 72. And so when you take a look at the stats, how does that break down? Like Andy said, Deuce was targeted a ton of times. He was targeted 8 times. Like Garrett Williams was only targeted twice. And on those 8 times, according to PFF, there were 5 receptions for 13 yards. And only 6 yards after catch. That's impressive for a true freshman. Yes, Max School. Let's get that out of the way. Max School. But for a freshman playing his first ever game, Coach Babers in his press conference today said that the team gave him the defensive game ball. And he, in his coaching career, has never given a game ball of any kind to a true freshman starting his first game. That should give you the kind of idea of how much impact that Deuce made on that team and on that game. And yes, the coverage was good. The interception was great. And then the thing that everyone pointed out on Twitter, Deuce made open field tackles. This team doesn't make open field tackles last season. Deuce made a ton of open field tackles and a lot of solo tackles. He was the leading solo tackler with 5. And that is one of the more impressive games I've seen from a true freshman.
Yeah, I'll take that any day of the week. Like that solves the question of what's happening opposite of Garrett if he leaves.
Yeah, like that. It is amazing to me because you look at what all those stats just illustrate that Deuce is at worst, average ACC cornerback as a true freshman. So you've got Garrett Williams, who most people are now coming to terms with the fact that he's probably gone in a day 1 or a day 2 NFL draft pick this year on one side. And you've got an ACC caliber average corner at worst on the other side, who Deuce's ceiling is probably higher than anybody that we've seen come through Syracuse under Babers before. Like, this secondary went from being a huge question mark to being at least solidified on 2 edges. There's still some questions about the rover play. There's still some questions about the safety play. But overall, having your 2 corners solidified not only gives everybody a big sigh of relief as a fan, as a coaching staff, it opens up things schematically that you could not do otherwise. Because now, Steve and I are just like, we talked about this last year. Early in the season, Tony White was able to get really aggressive with his blitz packages because he knew he had guys who could win one-on-one, man-to-man battles on the outside and up the middle with Cisco in that rover position. If you can have winning one-on-one battles on the edges when it comes to ACC play, and you can blitz to maybe make up for some of these defensive linebacker deficiencies that we might be seeing so far, this defense suddenly becomes a big variance question mark to what we saw against Ohio. You're going to have some moments where they bend, but more than likely they're not going to break. And that suddenly makes Syracuse much more dangerous when their offense is possession, run the ball, not make mistakes. Because Syracuse suddenly becomes a team that doesn't give you a lot of opportunities to take the game away from them. You actively have to do something to win the game.
Yeah, and that itself takes some of the pressure off of, that tweener position, that rover, or any of the non-Jahad Carter starters in the safety situation. If they can start dialing some of them up, and yes, you go 4 deep in the coverage, and someone like a Ben LeBras is coming hard, that's when he turns into a wild card. That's where you want him. You don't want him to be able to be targeted. You want him to play that role where he can play that coverage role when you need him to. Or you can send him, or you can run him in the flats, or you can, do what you want to with him. That rover turns into the wild card rather than the I have to be back as a 3 deep safety type situation. which doesn't help anybody.
I am all here for a Ben LeBron safety blitz at some point during the season.
He's not a small human being. I'm fine with it.
There is a non-zero chance that he just absolutely bull rushes against Clemson and gets into the backfield and has like that highlight play that reminds everybody, oh yeah, for whatever reason, Syracuse just plays Clemson tough for no logical reason whatsoever. It just always happens like that. Like last year it was the Garrett Williams interception, pick six. A LeBron safety sack for like minus 15 yards seems like a safe bet this year,
and would continue our Canadian trend. Because when all else fails, I will rep Team Canada when it comes to football and soccer. So
it is.
Yeah, I mean, at this rate, Canada is going to be our North American representation at CONCACAF at the World Cup in a couple years.
Go Tajon! Really, I'm just happy for Tajon. I'm really happy for Tajon and Kamal. So this, we're obviously really happy with the way that Syracuse played. This honestly was the best case scenario for the Orange in that they got a solid win. They didn't show a ton. They didn't get overly exposed. But that's not to say that this was all, roses and perfection all the way around. There were some issues with the game that needs some resolution coming into this week's game against Rutgers. One of the big ones is the passing game. Christian, you mentioned off the top that Tommy DeVito, his RPO reads were excellent, and he was able to hand the ball off a lot. I am almost guaranteeing that Rutgers is going to sell out against the run after watching this film, and they probably should. And the question becomes, can Tommy make the throws needed, which remains to be seen. And the other half of that equation is who's going to catch them. Because we saw Taj get some run. His stats don't look great, but he was normal Taj, got open, got the ball in space, looked fine. There wasn't a whole lot positive about what happened with the rest of the receiving core. Not a ton of separation. Luke Benson wasn't really out there. What do you think? Obviously, we're not in Sterling Gilbert's ear. We don't exactly know what he's going to be able to do to improve or what he withheld. But what do you think needs to happen in this Rutgers game to give you more confidence in this aerial attack moving forward?
A lot more of the mid-passing game. We saw a lot of the short passing game. Again, and it was mainly Taj Harris, which is what Tommy was comfortable with. Dumping the ball off to Taj on a curl route, on a short in or out route, and letting him go to work. But if you can open up a bit more of the passing game, I mean, Anthony Quealy in a slant route is as iconic of a duo as you can get nowadays. Like, more of those type of routes where you can get guys 10 yards downfield, 15 yards downfield. Those are also in Tommy's wheelhouse, and those are comfortable throws that he can make. We're not looking for the over-the-top go routes on every single ball. And while he missed both of his chances, there was some conversation with Adam Terry on the on SU's IMG radio network where he said maybe the wide receivers were losing the ball in the lights or just having trouble with the lights. The downfield shots, although nice and what Tommy was known for, aren't necessarily what, especially with the wide receivers that Syracuse have right now, probably aren't what exactly you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, and especially if Luke Benson's not going to be running on the majority of passing plays. So, what you're looking for is more of those 10, 15-yard routes that can show the wide receivers that they can get open. Taj does that well. Quealy does that well. Remains to be seen about everyone else. So, a couple more of those plays just to get Tommy into his wheelhouse is something I think we need to see more of.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, coming out of this game is the way they were running the ball, they didn't really need to open that up. They could show as little look as possible. You know, they know you're going to target Taj. Tommy will lock in on his first read. We did see that from everything I've gathered. I hope he can shake that a little as the season progresses, but there was no reason. There was no point at which Syracuse was in a position where they needed to open the playbook. Like, once you come off script, you can just run the same things that kept working, and if they keep working, you keep running them. And the way Sean Tucker was cutting back, like, most of from what I saw, most of the runs that were impactful or big plays were distinctly cutbacks. It was, drive, you're running a, zone read right, and the next thing you know, he's cutting backside B gap and off to the races because the line did their job and washed guys. And if they can continue doing that, there's no reason to open up the passing game besides that, short to mid game and then a couple shots over the top just to mix things up and keep people honest. So I don't know. I don't seem to be that worried about it. I don't think anybody is really that worried about it. But it is something that needs to be kept tabs on. There we go. Words are hard.
If you really want to be worried about the passing game, there is an area that, while like the open field stuff, when you're in the middle of drives, and like you said, you didn't really need to deviate from the run. Where it really needed to work on was the red zone, because there were a couple of times in the red zone where like some floors had to be made, and partially that's on Tommy. A large portion of that is also on the play calling, because that was also abysmal as well in the red zone. And that's where I start to have a little bit of concern. Back to Syracuse football as normal. Everyone welcome back. Syracuse still sucks in the red zone. Expect to see a David Hale's tweet about that at some point, because it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The continued, and like this is a thing that goes back like 4 coaches at this point. Like this is not. I still have PTSD from Doug Marone's offensive coordinator, who's now somehow at the NFL level and whose name's escaping me in this exact moment. Yes, Daniel Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett running a jet sweep with Jerome Smith at the 2. Like
that is okay.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was the thing.
Oh, wow, that hurts.
That was
hurts.
the thing.
Wow.
It was incredibly frustrating, and it's just like, again, I don't understand what it is about Syracuse that makes coaches lose all red zone awareness. But long term, I would really like to see them use a Luke Benson in the red zone, because that's exactly what that kind of body is there for.
Remember back in 2017 and 2018, where were a lot of those red zone touchdowns too? A tight end named Ravion Pierce. Mm-hmm. And he scored a ton of those red zone touchdowns on what was RPO plays, him blocking and then shedding his blocker and then just waltzing into the end zone.
It's the positive for Syracuse was that they went 8 for 12 on third down, which means that they were able to convert when it mattered most of the time until they got to that red zone. Because yes, the number of field goals that they kicked, they should have easily probably won. Like they probably left 12 points on the board, 3 drives that should have ended in a touchdown that they ended up kicking a field goal on. So you add 12 points to the score, and it's a definitive blowout where, Garrett Schrader and the backups are getting in, a possession, a drive or 2 earlier than they did. So it's something that, again, I'm hoping it's like what Steve's saying. We had a thing that worked. We're just going to continue to do it. We're not going to show anything at this point in time. But to kind of transition things as we move through here, Syracuse is now playing Rutgers. If you all did not know, Rutgers is coached by one Greg Schiano, who used to coach Rutgers back when they were in the Big East. Rutgers was good under Greg Schiano. He then went to the NFL, which he would like you to never remember that happened. It was very bad. He ended up back at Ohio State for a couple of years. He's now back at Rutgers as the head coach. And you're going to hear a lot of narratives about how Greg Schiano has revived Rutgers. Rutgers last year went 3-6. The reason that is significant is because they had won 3 Big Ten games in their previous 3 seasons. So Greg Schiano increased the number of Big Ten wins by 300%. They were still a bottom-tier Big Ten team.
In a COVID year with a big asterisk next to it.
Exactly. So, as you can tell, I do not buy into a lot of this Rutgers is back hype. I don't think either of you really do, to the extent that the national media seems to be. Vegas has made Rutgers a 2-point favorite in this game, which I feel like sounds about right based off of previous Syracuse-Rutgers games. And so, Steve, I'll throw it to you first. As a survivor of many Syracuse-Rutgers games that were just stupid on a level that can only be reached by Syracuse-Rutgers.
Yeah. Including their last meeting that I was present for. That was
There's no
bad.
way that this game ends nearly as cleanly as this Ohio game went, right?
In all honesty, there's a chance, just because, everyone will look at what Rutgers did to Temple. And as noted in the chat, Rutgers averaged 3.8 yards per play on offense against Temple. Bozzy in the chat rocked that out. So I can attest that that is not great. Um, they had 5 possessions started around the Temple 20, and they scored on special teams and defense. That is his full comment. I'm going to take that and run with it. And the fact that if that's all Rutgers hung their hat on, when you look at the numbers, they had less total yards than Syracuse. They had a less prolific offense in general than Syracuse. Um, I'm not going to, go out and say they're going to be a walk, but I think a lot of the scariness of looking at the score line versus what is going to show up on the field may be a different story. Now, having not watched the Ohio Bobcats game that Syracuse just played, I will toss this to our New Jersey native and get the actual the actual scoop on the State University of New Jersey and what they're doing.
Well, as a New Jersey native, I can tell you that no one in New Jersey watches the State University of New Jersey football team. So, and that includes me. So I am just as informed on the State University of New Jersey football team as is the rest of New Jersey. That being said, the fact that their defense was good gives a little concern because I'm not sure how the defense got it, whether it was fumbles, interceptions. There were some stupid turnovers last year, let's be honest. And like Andy said, selling out on the run is probably going to be a big part of Rutgers' defensive philosophies heading into this week. So that means, like we said, Tommy's going to have to throw the ball. Now, is the playbook at this point complex enough where the offense doesn't look like they're running the same 3 or 4 plays? Because if it does, then that's where I think Rutgers is going to have an opportunity on the defensive side to maybe jump in front of routes or take advantage of wide receivers that aren't Harris, Queeley, or Benson. And that's where you can probably start to see this game turn, is Rutgers hard committing to the run and then taking advantage of the run game not developing.
Yeah, and Rutgers did not do a great job at stopping Temple's rushing attack, which again, caveat being that Temple is chasing the game, so they're not going to necessarily commit to the run as much. But their starting running back averaged 4.8 yards a carry. Their quarterback averaged over 6 yards a carry. Backup running back averaged over 3.5 yards per carry. So if I'm Greg Schiano, which, again, I have to get to a especially crazy part of my brain to even access part of that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, my thought would be we stunk against the run. Syracuse runs the ball. I'm stacking the box with 7 or 8 guys, and I'm going to be overly aggressive at stopping this one thing. And if Syracuse beats us consistently through the air, then we'll readjust. But Tommy DeVito hasn't beaten anybody through the air since his freshman year, and we haven't seen it consistently from him. So we know that if you are somebody who plays college fantasy football, Taj Harris seems like a much safer bet this week than last week. He's probably going to be targeted a ton of times in that slot position as Rutgers brings the house and Tommy's looking for a quick check down. There's also, we saw, Christian, you were the first on this. You talked about this all offseason. Cooper Lutz was the true backup. He got the second most. He seemed to be above the pecking order than Jarvion Howard, and he also ended up getting a touchdown at the end of the game. He seems like somebody we might see more of in this game, if only because of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, especially if you're trying to blitz counter Rutgers.
Regarding forgetting how that drive ended. Remember the last drive against NC State last year? That was basically the Harris and Lutz show until that drive ended. So that's probably where I think Andy's probably drawing a lot of inspiration on, because those are the type of plays that I think Syracuse is going to need. Checkdowns to Lutz, in routes from Harris, finding him open space so that he can go to work. And I think those are the plays that Syracuse are going to need to develop. And again, it's that like 10, 15 yard, maybe drop it back to 5 to 15 yards that Syracuse is going to need to develop, especially now that teams know that, hey, this is a good Syracuse team on the ground. We're going to need to stop the ground attack before we can worry about the passing attack, because Syracuse hasn't proven to us yet that they can defeat us through the air.
And Steve, on the defensive side of the ball, again, we talked about it a lot last year at the beginning of the season. You infamously, or I guess not infamously, actually famously got into it with former SB Nation Richard Johnson on Twitter about the different ways that the 3-3-5 can be rolled into different looks. It seems like McKinley Williams is not going to be starting this Rutgers game. He was listed as the backup on the depth chart. He dressed against Ohio but didn't get any snaps. I would assume that if he plays against Rutgers, it's probably going to be gradual minutes or break glass in case of emergency type of play. So assuming that we don't have Bear on the line to kind of eat up space and really dominate the middle of the line of scrimmage in the trenches, what would you like to see on the defensive side of the ball for Syracuse to kind of add additional pressure or find other ways to attack the backfield if you don't have that one force in the middle?
Oh. You always throw the loaded ones at me. So,
You're a former football player.
Fair enough. Without Bear in the middle, that really, Harper is a solid backup, but he's not Bear.
Yeah. That
said, once you get past him, because he's going to get tired at some point, maybe we're at the point, because I would assume at this point Bear is listed as the 2 because he missed as much time as he did during the preseason camps. He was out at least 2 of the weeks, maybe all 3.
I think it was closer to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's trying to get up the game speed. Week 2, I don't know if he's quite up to even spelling Harper. So we'll see where that goes. That said, if Harper can't fill that gap, you're going to have to dial up pressure from somewhere, and you're going to have to inch your middle backers closer to the line. You're going to have to start either bringing Thompson or bringing Wax or bringing somebody else to make up for that pressure lost. One thing of note for Rutgers, seeing I just pulled up their PFF page, Noah Vedral, their quarterback, has a 37.7 passing rating. So if we can do something to force them to pass, that seems like a great idea. Now that said, he also has an 83.0 run rating. So yeah. I don't know what the stats
were. And there lies the rubber.
Yeah. So do we just, run the rover on a spy the entire game and just say, hey, you go figure out what he's doing and just watch this guy? Like, why not?
So make sure Rob Hanna eats his Wheaties.
Yeah.
No, or his 3 wishes cereal, whatever you want to go nowadays.
God. Bravo.
It is. It's really funny. I don't know if you guys are watching the Secret Base History of the Atlanta Falcons documentary that they're doing.
I've caught a couple of it, yeah.
They famously just did the Michael Vick episode, and Michael Vick used to love running against the spy because he was Michael Vick and could beat anybody. So he basically said that you're giving me 10 versus 11, and I'm going to win that every time, which is the most Michael Vick thing to ever be said. And they also mentioned Syracuse in that Michael Vick episode a lot because of the Donovan McNabb Michael Vick showdowns that happened. And for those that do not know your lore, Michael Vick Donovan McNabb recruited Michael Vick to Syracuse. Michael Vick stayed at Donovan McNabb's dorm room. McNabb was his official chaperone on campus. It was like this whole thing that didn't end up happening.
Well, yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, listen, he's from Virginia. It made sense that he was going to go to Virginia Tech, but Syracuse was really close to pulling something crazy off there.
Well, it wouldn't be as crazy as Pasqualone landing Ray Rice before he got fired. Oh, wait, that happened. Oh, wait, and that's the Rutgers tie. It's all coming full circle.
It is all full circle. Gentlemen, we have 5 minutes left to go. We've talked about the Rutgers game. We'll have tons of Rutgers preview this week as we kind of jam 5 days worth of previews into 4 days. Thank you, Labor Day. And we are for sure going to go more in depth with them. That being said, I think we did a pretty good job covering the up top stuff, and now it is time for the predictions. I am on record saying I don't think Rutgers is that good. I am punch drunk on Syracuse run game right now. I am predicting a 13-9 Syracuse victory. It is going to be ugly. It is going to be terrible. We are all going to sit through an absolute slobber knocker of a game that we are all going to wonder why we do this. I guarantee you there will be more turnovers this game than take place in any other game that Syracuse plays for the rest of the season. And it is going to be terrible. But they will come out on top because Sean Tucker is able to just consistently get enough yardage. It's at the Dome. Andre Smith is able to get the kicks in when we need them to. But man, nobody is going to enjoy watching this game. That is my prediction. It feels right in my heart of hearts as a Syracuse football fan. Steve, what say you?
That sounds worse than the last meeting we had that I watched. Like, how?
Syracuse can't score in the red zone. Rutgers is probably going to frustrate Syracuse on offense. And I don't think that Rutgers' offense is actually all that good.
God damn it. 23-13 Syracuse.
I like that.
Yeah, I think Syracuse is better than we expected. I think Rutgers is worse than they looked. In all honesty, all of these are really dumb predictions because of the amount of points that both teams put up last week. But who knows? I'll probably change this by the time we put out the actual thread, but, my uneducated guess at this point says that.
I'm probably going to change this a couple of times also. I forgot we were doing predictions. I was not ready to make a prediction.
And I had no idea.
That on us. And did Andy drop that on us? And I'm like, God, now I don't want to go to this game.
Yeah.
27-24 Syracuse double overtime victory.
That
There
also
we go.
sounds just as painful.
Oh God. I'll take painful with
That's
offense
probably,
over
and that's
painful,
probably going to
painful.
change. But I think, yes, both of these teams are probably not. Syracuse is probably not as good as that Ohio game, and Rutgers is definitely not as good as that Temple game. From what we can see.
Yeah.
Rutgers going based off the preseason, Rutgers did look better than Syracuse heading into this preseason, but now that both teams have played a game, Syracuse looks like they may just be a slightly better. But again, like Andy said, I don't trust this team in the red zone to score. I don't trust Rutgers to move the ball, especially through the air.
This definitively feels like one of those, like, all right, we find out who you are games. And I really hate saying that about the second game in a college football season, in a post-pandemic season. But man, this is really going to give a lot of people on both sides an opportunity to kind of see what they actually have. And I love that because this is what makes college football ridiculously fun, far more fun than the NFL. But it's also what makes being a college football fan so frustrating. Because, this is going to be a game that, and I have an article coming out on this topic later this week. If we lose this game, which is totally in the cards, we're going to look back at this game as like, oh man, wouldn't it suck if we win 5 games this year and we lost the Rutgers game? Like, that's going to be the cloud that hangs over this team's head the entire rest of the season. Because we're going to look back, no matter how this game goes, it's going to seem like the winnable game that we would have dropped.
Oh, my
So you're talking about 2017 Middle Tennessee State.
Yes.
Too
Yep,
soon,
which was also the
soon.
second game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Smoke them if you got them.
I think in my 6-6 prediction, I did have us losing to Rutgers. So
Yes.
So
Steve's chaos version might be coming true here.
Again, everyone, you look down there on the bottom of your screen. That's at Dutch Hart. Tweet at him if you if this does happen.
Don't get mad at us.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
hey, if it does, we know we're going 6-6. There we go.
Spin it
That
if
would
you
require
can.
that would
I-
require that would require Clemson to not score another offensive touchdown, which would just be funny.
What happens if? All right, we're into what if territory.
Yep.
Okay.
What
okay.
if, what if Clemson really sucks this year? What if DJ Ugalele doesn't do what they thought he would?
Then I'm really hoping I don't have package day. That's starting that week.
I'm going to say this. Alex Kirshner, I think I don't know if it was Alex Kirshner or if it was Kirk. I'm really sorry. You guys all tweet the same stuff. I love you all, but like you all have like the same hive mind from hanging out together. I understand from hanging out with you two guys all the time. It just kind of happens.
Mhm.
Clemson has gotten this far without ever recruiting an elite offensive line. Like their offensive line does not send hogs to the NFL the way that the SEC schools do, the way that Alabama does. And that's not to say Clemson's offensive line is bad. It's just to say that Clemson's offensive line can be beaten, which Syracuse has shown multiple times. I think this might be the year where that actually comes back to bite them. Because as Steve has so eloquently pointed out so many times, offensive line gets built very differently. And in like a 18-month span where everything got changed, where a Clemson machine had everything gummed up because of a pandemic, because of things changing, because of whatever happened, and you needed to be running at max efficiency in order to hold that high standard with less than elite players, maybe this is the flaw that starts opening it up. And we've seen what happens when a team does not have a good offensive line.
Let's cast your back, man, to 2017 because now the narratives are all playing at pretty much exactly the same way. Clemson, Friday night, middle of October. Clemson's coming in with a backup quarterback that was from the previous year. He was starting his first full year for the Tigers. And what happened in that Clemson game? Kelly Bryant got sacked by Chris Slayton and was out for the rest of the game. And Clemson went to their second string for the rest of the game in the second half.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility because if Bear is back by that game, that front three might be able to wreak a lot of havoc on a lot of teams, not just Clemson. But you need to have Bear in there, like as Steve kind of talked about when we did the original 3-3-5 switch. Bear's role is to eat up as much space as possible, and he's not a true nose tackle in like the way that you think of like a Casey Hampton or a Vince Wilfork in the old NFL days. He's like the more modern nose tackle where he takes up guys because he's so freakishly athletic. You need to have more than one guy on him to stop him. And if Syracuse can do that with him and their two other edge guys, we could be cooking with gas. I'm getting Steve. I hate you that you've made me this excited about Syracuse football after one goddamn game. This is not okay.
Let's all pump the brakes because we were so excited after the Georgia Tech game and then it all came crumbling down last year.
Yeah, but we've already matched our win total from last year, so it's all gravy at this point.
This is very true, and this feels like a great place to end it.
Before we do, Syracuse 2-0 win over Niagara. Kerr and Calvo goals.
Nice, very nice.
Blow the train horn.
And now we need to go watch that on ESPN Plus and write a recap. Great.
All you and Christian, I have to go write my NFL and the Orange in the NFL story. But for those that want to read these stories tomorrow, head over to NunesMagician.com. If you are watching this on tomorrow morning on the News Magician website, thank you as always for reading our stuff. We really appreciate the support all football season. If you're watching live, thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe to the Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician channel for all of our video content. Make sure you ring that bell so that way you can get notified every time we go live. It's 8 p.m. on Sunday nights unless something weird happens like a holiday, and then we'll go live on Monday. But it's going to be us all football season, breaking down the previous game, previewing the upcoming game. We'll be doing this all football season long. And then basketball will get thrown in this mix, and you get basketball and football in the same show. We're going to be here for 5 hours those nights. It's going to be great. Also, make sure that throughout the week you're listening to our podcast that John and Dan do. They'll cover different angles than we cover because they actually listen to the show. So, hi guys, thanks for listening.
Yeah, they'll be diving more in as we progress through the year. We'll be handling more of the recap stuff. They'll be handling more of the preview for Rutgers. So you'll see a deeper dive of what's going to be going on next week with them.
They will actually be willingly watching the State University of New Jersey.
Yeah. Godspeed, guys. Godspeed.
God bless their souls.
Yeah, we're not that crazy. But for those that were crazy enough to stick with us, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're all really happy Syracuse won, and hopefully we get to come back to you guys next week after a second win. In the meantime, go Orange, and enjoy. I hope you enjoyed your Labor Day weekend.
Go Orange.
Orange.